Zatapenui Tachli, the rabbit that goes afterwards. The mutable rabbit of ingenuity. As the corresponding year to the Chinese horse and the zodiological Gemini, the mutable rabbit, or Zatapenui Tachli, draws from the previous foundational resources of the fixed house to invent new methods of expression towards communicating with the greater community at large. These can and may take the form of technological achievements, but more often than not they are in the form of unique artistic expressions that expand the mind further afield towards greater idealistic pastures, and which then build upon subjective personal value systems and inner perception. The ingenuity of this rabbit year is specifically its personal idealism. As the rabbit that specifically points towards the southern direction of the compass and corresponding to the season of summer, it is undoubtedly the emotional rabbit of release and mental liberation, and therefore it also provokes the idea of emotional momentum, which these people prefer to keep on a very high and happy note. With such a high pitch of emotional fervor that these people project, it is no wonder that often others wonder what is going to happen next in this unpredictable rabbit's presence, since such exuberance for personal involvement is not always the usual feat. Though sensing the capriciousness of the moment themselves, many of them can just as well become a conduit for peace and calm. They have no problem cooperating when the social movement is perceived as being fair and negotiable for all, which is measured specifically by how they feel. Feeling the unease of competition, these rabbits use their personal ingenuity to ease and nullify the situation by being more passive about competitive matters that are usually based on finance and position, and instead, while focusing on the ideal of cooperation and the principle of guaranteed self-expression among people, they attend to reinforcing rightful communication among the group, even if this is viewed with suspicion. Therefore, support will be needed to carry through with this plan. Perceiving the customary and nullifying effects of restricted group cooperation, these rabbits feel that their inner ingenuity, which is based on the personal awareness of the interactive elements of emotional and intellectual momentum, is in fact a sufficient creative force for which to express their point of view, both for themselves and the rest of the group as well. If the timing is right, the release of their emotional perspectives can become a sufficient stimulation for group activities. But however, the basis of their realizations tend to remain more personal and with a subjective learning experience, which is for the most advanced of them based on the expansion of consciousness and personal perceptions. Here, the rabbit's rapid tread marks quickly distinguish the characteristics of this sign with the preoccupation of a journey that can be oftentimes more mental than it is physical. At times, this can manifest in a diverse mental nature that will indeed visit the vistas of the intellect for a panoramic view of the world at large, or it can bargain for a more specialized experience of perspective that guarantees a wholeness and integration of the spirit with not just the community, but the whole universe as well. Thus, the ingenuity and purpose of this rabbit is to attempt at taking its inverted nature and transforming it into a comprehensive theme of awareness that is to be distributed through new forms of communication. Often, an emphasis may also be placed on the thriving for the constant reinvention of a social scene that promises a diverse social interaction and fortification of knowledge, though ultimately it is their own enlightenment that is sought for the purpose of their ongoing mental journey, which delights the child within. Yakapentli Akatl, the reed arrow that comes before, the cardinal reed of cultural foundations. As the corresponding year sign to the Chinese sheep and the zodiological Cancer, the cardinal reed, or Yakapentliacatl, draws from the previous idealism of the mutable Aztec rabbit to create an accepted or recognized cultural tradition. This is done with passivity, much in the same way that the reed beds passively root themselves to the watery shore's edge. Here they serve the purpose of housing and protecting aquatic animals, which in turn attracts a variety of hungry passers-by who come together under one roof to form a diverse culture, accumulated from a history of tribal languages and traditions. The immediate instinct of these people is to accept diversity and treat it with diplomatic passivity, knowing that the community, like the nature of water, must always run into itself again and again. As the reed husk emerges from the waters, then surely an artistic tradition emerges from the peaceful interaction of community cooperation, which can also be an advertisement towards philanthropic endeavors as well. The gathering of the aquatic reed here, in this case of Yakapentliacatl, or reed of cultural foundations, then takes the special form of the family and the values found there, which are then recycled and dispersed back out into the community. All aspects of the community were born at first from a specific point within the human family unit, with the engagement of engendering specific values and education contributing to the moral productivity in all situations that demand community behavior and conscience. Here, the reed stalk is a rigid force, being a ruler that emerges straight up from the collective waters of the community as a moral guidepost that takes the form of community counselors and therapists who heal the emerging distortions brought about through an overload of diversity that is to be found about at the panoramic threshold of world relations. In order to subterfuge the emerging aggressive quality of environmental encroachment at the water's edge, a delicate feminine approach is elected for the communion taking place among the ambassadors of the states. Suppression of the watery emotions might assist in the calming of the waters that reflect an illuminating picture of reality when untouched, so that the business of sharing and distribution among people may commence. Valuable to the circumstances is a true and guiding scientific knowledge pertaining to the assets at hand, which should describe a balanced approach to the methods of social intervention among the foreigners from the distant sides of the room. Thus, through the art of diplomacy, the stage is supposed to be set for an engaging dialogue between contrasting strangers, who nonetheless remember their most valuable lessons of youth brought about through the initial conflicts of territory. An initial distrust will always be remembered, along with a suspicion for the ever-present possibility of fractured loyalties, which reinforce the necessary pattern of distrust. With these memories, the cardinal reed seeds the reed beds with its own inherent natures, and then slowly but surely, one by one, continues to build upon the physical boundaries of protection necessary to guarantee its protection and tranquility within its self-sustaining environment. From the mass collective community, we once again arrive to a point of self-generation through a form of procreation that instills security with the allocation of outright numbers that then emerge as the populace of nations, which place their flags upon the stems of their rising identities. Napantla Chalchiwe Totolin, the war turkey of the middle, the fixed war turkey of competition. As the corresponding year sign to the Chinese monkey and the zodiological Leo, the fixed war turkey, or Napantla Chalchiwe Totolin, draws from the previous reed of cultural foundations by implementing an element of competition through the ongoing questioning of the accepted value systems in order to reinforce further individual diversification. In a sense, this shows a tendency towards disbelief and a nonconformity, which in this case is a form of denunciation done specifically for the purpose of relinquishing personal political power. The feeling here is that too much has been given, and some of these people are out for revenge. In this manner, the people born within this year are tricky in their manners and conversation. They pretend to be open-ended and open-minded. However, this is only an advertisement towards arguing the rightful premise of a respectful and engaging dialogue between two individuals. Their true intent is to return power to the political clans of war and domination. These clans may literally be their own personal political party or religion, their educational institutions or personal vocations, or simply the ideal of their nation or alleged family circle. Aside from their somewhat dominating and emotionally suppressive characteristics, which they constantly bombard their opponents with, they nonetheless understand the ins and outs of proper bartering and sales and know when someone is trying to pull a fast one on them. For it is this testy warlike environment that they subsist on as much as they detest it. For this reason, Napantla Chalchiwe Totolin, or the war turkey of competition, is ideally the master of marketing and manipulating people, which is often accomplished through force. When outright force is not altogether productive, they will then submit to deception, all the while in a combative mood that resembles the dance of a restless turkey, competing and pecking around the collective food pile. For that matter, personal resources are the principal focus here, and which are often seen as lacking to themselves, which then becomes the cause of a great deal of personal insecurity that is based on monetary acquisition and other more formal forms of recognition that are garnered in society for the specific needs of hierarchical status and corporate position. Of course, the most confusing aspect of this sign is its association to the warm zodiological fire sign of Leo here. But it need only be observed that this is, in essence, a true case of the lion eating the cubs. Again, too much has been given, too much has been already sacrificed to the collective ideal. It's time to take back. Now, there is an aggressive campaign to revitalize the productive creativity of the self, although in but a selfish manner, which calls forth deep within the need for personal recognition, and above all else, personal rewards. Indeed, these are very personal rewards, because if they are not given to them, then perhaps they will simply take them. This could be compared to the ancient pillage of the community warriors, whose only hope for advancement in life was to plunder the community abroad. It was through this ongoing violence and victimization that the warrior was promised ever so slightly to sit among the generals upon the commandment posts of combat within the War of the Rising Stage that purged outward in the materialistic tribal societies. On a more mundane level, between friends, this may simply be a clever relationship that invites testy challenges, which are, if not welcome, are at least engaging when considering the tricky business of life. One-upmanship will no doubt color the eventual stages of the relationship, and for which case one should indeed know the intention of one's opponent, through his ongoing advertised religious beliefs and personal convictions. It should be observed how these values specifically contribute or subtract from your own, and never forget this could only be leading up to a very minor or indeed a very major confrontation if the stakes are high. The lesson to teach here, in any case, is self-control, for this is what is lacking, but for that matter you must have yours by keeping your guard up, for their intent is to justify their feelings through their actions. Zatapanue Kali, the temple house that goes afterwards, the mutable house of salvation. As the corresponding year sign to the Chinese rooster and the zodiological Virgo, the mutable house of salvation, or Zatapanue Kali, draws from the previous war turkey of competition by amending conflicting information through institutionalism, i.e. through orthodoxy. This orthodoxy may come in the form of either a religion or through conventional education. In this way, the mutable house is affiliated with the ancient houses where people gathered to receive religious education and to be cared for, so that the ancient church, as it was in one case used as a place of education, was also, in many cases, the hospital, as this is often the situation today in some tribal communities. Therefore, this is the house of healing, both in a physical as well as in a more personal and emotional sense. As a gathering place for many, or as a community temple, there naturally was in the past, as well as there is to this day, some degree of ritualistic maintenance to be implemented upon the enclosure in order to preserve the temple's sanctity and basic longevity. To this degree, the temple is also a source of work and therefore corresponds to the modern work environment in general, which is where most people feel they can find their personal salvation while conscientiously working with and among others of the community. This gives people a needed sense of identity, which is another overriding aspect of the house sign. The people born within this year take special note of the prestige involved in owning their own home quarters and the aesthetic development of its interior. However, as participants of this orthodox process of education that is supplied by the local community temples, comparatively known as the universities, these people are more prone to stand out as examples of the process by reinforcing the status quo while casting doubt on anything that does not directly come from the modern temple's enclosure. In some cases, this could indeed be exposed by conformity to a religious and/or an educational doctrine. However, given the structural concerns of the architectural temple house, a more scientific approach is desirable here, since this is a community building, and others could be physically hurt if it is not safely maintained on a consistent daily basis. Furthermore, in terms of our times, a scientific inquiry is far more authoritative than just a simple religious faith. The understandable need for territorial control and how that kind of authority flies in the face of humane group cooperation is a clue to how the restricted form of personal expression is submitted from the boundaries of this particular temple house. But for that matter, in more liberal individuals, the temper may fly off the handle from time to time as a natural outlet from the ongoing social pressures which collect around this gathering point. However, despite these reinforced habitual social pressures, there is no reason to be so fussy over matters concerning the modern scientific domination of facts, which merely becomes a way of getting around the responsibility of recognizing the inherent rightfulness of all living creatures as having an applicable form of intelligence and a place in our world, simply because we as humans have mastered the practice of how to insulate ourselves through the ancient technology of the temple enclosure.